Let's do this thing. Okay, hi everyone. We don't have slides today. We're gonna make this all interactive. So we're gonna talk today about, what's it called? Pathways, not roadblocks. I don't remember what the rest of our title was, but the idea we're talking about today is we want to talk a bit today about what the tags are, what they do great, what we think could do better, and also we want to hear from all of you. This is Maintainer Summit, right? We could stand up here and talk about what we know about tags. We also want to know and hear from all of you as well. So we have some questions that we'll ask you all as well. But before we get into that, I'm Marina. I'm a research scientist at Edera, and more importantly for today, I'm one of the co-chairs of the CNCF tag security and compliance.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dylan Page. I'm a manager of the core infrastructure team at Lambda, and I'm also co-chair of the tag infrastructure. So, awesome.
Yeah, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. So, those of you in the audience, how many of you know what a tag is? Oh, this is great. Now I don't have to. So, if you know what a tag is, how many know that the tags were rebooted this past April? Even better. So for those of you that don't, previously for the past 10 years, the CNCF had 8 tags. I think 8, right? And recently they were rebooted, so they were structured down to 5 for various reasons, and there was whole new elections done and kind of refreshed. And now this is the first KubeCon where we have these new 5 new tags. So it is we have infrastructure, security and compliance, operations and reliability, workload foundations, and then developer experience. Yes, I got that all off the top of my head. No notes, okay, I swear. They're not written down right here. So there's an exhaustive list of reasons why the tags were rebooted, but what we wanted to focus on today is a couple topics around what the TOC saw as leadership burnout in the technical advisory groups, as well as like kind of loss of domain and industry experts representation of industry experts within the tags. And so a lot of what was seen across the tags was kind of like on an ad hoc basis. Some tags were ran very well, other tags were burning out and rolling through leadership very quickly. And so we wanted to kind of essentially talk about, what are some ideas to how we prevent this from happening, so that way, after doing this tag reboot, we don't find ourselves in the same position we were pre-reboot, maybe a year or 2 from now. So, in the discussion, or in the talk description, there was a couple ideas, and I want to do a quick shout out to Brant Keller, who originally me and him came up with the idea for this talk. He's given another talk. I forget what time. I don't have it. I should have.
It's right now, actually. So.
I should have. I should have promoted it.
It's actually happening at the same time, so you're all in the better place anyway.
But Marina was so gracious to fill in for Brant, but some of the things we had some ideas around, how we could, align the tags, and maybe have a rotating tag liaison program to help, mentor and almost kind of like similar to how the Kubernetes release team does shadows. But like after me and Marina talked a little bit, and we kind of realized it'd be a little not as productive if we were up here telling folks about like, hey, this is how we think it could work, and rather, kind of open it up to a format where for those of you that have been heavily involved with tags, or for those of you who haven't, what are some ways we can prevent maybe leadership burnout in the tags, or even how people socialize or understand what the tags are, what they do, and what their purpose is.
Yeah, so to kick it off, I think that we have a series of, so I'm looking at my notes, of questions we want to ask you. So I think we want to start off with is how did you all hear about tags, especially folks who are less actively involved in the tags? Like, what have you heard about them? What do you find interesting about tags? And kind of what would make you get involved in a tag, right? What are the things that that make you interested in coming to this talk today, right? So we have a mic there if folks want to participate in our talk, otherwise we'll keep talking at you, so.
So yes, I'm part of the Nokia OSPO, so I'm not very deeply involved in technical topics, but I have certain high-level interests in some areas, and that's where the tags are important for me. My current problem is that if I Google for CNCF tag, I get into a Git repo which doesn't tell me what tags are there and what these tags are doing. So for now, for example, I don't know which tags are important for me, and that's why I came to this talk.
Very cool. So yeah, it's about discoverability, right? Making sure that we tell people how to find us better. That's definitely one piece of this for sure. I'll leave it open for people to walk around.
I'll just say hi. I'm Joe Stringer. I work on the Cilium project. So as another CNCF project, I'm interested in, one, how can other CNCF projects interact with the tag? Because I think that you've probably got a lot of knowledge that we can share. And maybe it's vice versa, right? Like we can mutually benefit. And then also within our own project, we have similar questions about structure and burnout and all of these things. So I think it's interesting to have that discussion.
Yeah, and that brings up something interesting that we talked about a bunch in prepping for this talk is how, I think a lot of projects, they interact with tags when they're moving levels and then they forget about us between those stages. But I think that having that be a longer term relationship can be good both for us and for the projects, right? We have these specific domain expertise, but projects know what their problems are, right? We can only help if we know what your problems are, right? So yeah, I think that's definitely.
Yeah, I can tell you my experience with tags, how I came to know them. It was 2019, San Diego. We had ideas about how to run Postgres in Kubernetes. I'm from Cloud9 RPG, which is a sandbox incubating project with Marco over there. So we had these ideas, and we wanted to understand if they resonated in Kubernetes. So we understood that there was a tag for that, and that's how we started to, participate in the tag storage. So I'm here to also understand how the scenario is changing and how we can contribute back to this ecosystem, and also how to work with other projects so that we can create a synergy between different projects, because at the end of the day we all work in an area, but what people and organizations they want an entire infrastructure. So I think it's crucial that we work together with different projects. So I think tags can help a lot in this area. Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. So a couple tidbits out of that, just to recap. Discoverability is a big problem for tags right now. How do projects get more involved? I like to point out that I mentioned earlier there was an exhaustive list of reasons why the tag reboot happened. One of them being that the tags kind of certain tags specifically found themselves just solely doing project level presentations, and so it kind of became just a rotating door of projects coming in and presenting, and that was it, and there was no other really kind of work ongoing in the tag general meetings. One of the things that tags should be doing is focusing on ongoing support for projects on an ongoing basis, even if they're not moving levels. It should be happening consistently. There should be deep relationships, and the projects themselves should understand what tags fit for your project and you go to for domain and industry expertise. How do I do governance? how do how do I address security, and just looking for essentially leadership and the tags actually being an advisory group, not just advising up to the TOC, but advising out and down to the projects. So that brings us to kind of another question where and maybe kind of, if you don't mind me singling you out, you kind of brought up the whole project. Where do you see the most need from a project in terms of, we kind of talk about getting, advice or experience. Is it usually more on kind of the governance and, how to kind of help run an open source project in general, specifically one in the CNCF, or is it more on the technical expertise sides in the kind of various areas of like security, operations, infrastructure, workload foundations? Or maybe all the above.
And while you're thinking, I'll talk so you're not on the spot. But yeah, I think in tag security, we get projects come to us occasionally with like specific incidents that have happened or specific things. And I think that while we welcome those things, we welcome all questions, but I think also like how to make that more about like the long-term sustainability of the security of a project versus like incident response kind of one-off things, I think would be really helpful for kind of making these things more sustainable and getting those interactions with projects to be in some ways more positive, right? So we're not the people you come to when you have a bad day, but it's like how do we make this all how do we make all of us not have bad days, right?
So one of the things I also wanted to talk about, and I think is really big for tags, is it's very easy for a tag to have a scope and maybe accidentally go outside of it or try to be kind of overly helpful. But as a chair, maybe some tech leads, one of the things that I see as being really important is just encouraging participation at all levels. In the face of like, I don't know where to go, I don't know what I should be doing. I've seen in my time being previously a tech lead and just being a contributor to a tag, sometimes the meetings and the tags themselves can be kind of awkward because people what should I be doing? I don't want to overstep. And so I think the most important thing like chairs and the tags themselves can do is making sure that it's all of our responsibilities, and making sure that there is an environment where you can help people contribute at all levels. Like you don't have to be contributing code. You don't have to provide domain expertise in a white paper. It could be just as simple as saying, hey, I'm going to post about this tag on social media. I'm going to help triage or, go through all of the initiatives that have been going on. Or, hey, someone can't attend a meeting. I'm going to go attend this project review meeting and then report back to the tag for folks. And, because in open source, we all have day jobs. This is kind of like our second job. And so a lot of times personal things happen. You change jobs and you no longer can contribute the time that you have. And that contributes to suddenly having these like great leaders and domain experts that suddenly just disappear from the ecosystem or from open source. And so allowing for ways that we can think about how we can help each other understand and just contribute, just because even if you don't have a title. Like I talk about this in my tags too, like if there's somebody who wants to run a meeting and you're not a chair or a tech lead, or if you want to go and you want to do a project review and you're not a tech, like let's figure out, and there's not really a process for it yet, but like there's definitely ways we can promote that and work on making sure that there's a good way of mentoring and encouraging people to just contribute in all the possible ways that they can.
Yeah, and I think you used that word overstepping, and I just want to say for everybody here, there's no such thing as overstepping in these volunteer organizations, right? We're all volunteers. We actually want the help. We'd love the support. If you have the time and you see something that needs to be done, don't worry that you're not the person who has the permission to click the button. Just like we would love the help. So if you walk away with nothing else, don't ever feel like you're overstepping. At least in my tag, like we we want that to happen. So we want you to overstep, actually. Maybe we'll even make you a chair.
Go ahead.
Just a small observation, and this is, I had the fortune of announcing the first tag back in KubeCon 2019 in Barcelona, and sort of I've seen it, ebbs and flows of the organizations. I think a lot of the tag communities kind of suffer from and benefit from the same things that happen in open source projects, right? There are hype cycles that fund people, contributing to initiatives. 1 year service meshes are hot, and the next year observability is hot, and that pushes, that thing. And then there's obviously, a lot of the passion projects as well. But I think one thing, talking to burnout and having clear scope, from a personal point of view, I kind of see the tags as having two focuses. One is they have a job to do. Tag security needs to do reviews, and some of the other tags have to deliver that interaction with the projects. And I think it's really important to focus the scope and have clear objectives as to what you actually have to do, because that stuff just has to happen. And then the other stuff is about being inclusive and encouraging the community and encouraging those initiatives and having those deliverables, which at the end of the day are all about what the CNCF is there for, which is making cloud native ubiquitous and helping all of those projects go on and be successful, even when you're kind of out of the hype cycle and something maybe is, less exciting because it's boring, but it's boring because it's become mature, not because it's a problem, right? And I think that's the sort of challenge that we have to kind of focus on.
Yeah, I think that's a really key piece, is that I think it's easy to get people involved in the latest thing, right? In the latest, like right now it's AI or whatever. I think there's like 3 different initiatives right now around AI, which is great. We should definitely be looking forward. But I think it's also important to kind of keep the lights on. I think that's what a lot of folks, especially in the infrastructure space, that's what you do, right? Is you keep the lights on, you keep working on stuff even when it's quote unquote boring, right? That's the.
+1, definitely. I've been in an organization before where, because we didn't have a strong feeling of like, what is the important work we're doing, the thing we all actually want to achieve within this group, we kind of lose our way, and we end up focusing on stuff that none of us actually want to discuss. We show up to the meeting, and then we kind of just argue about should this person be in, whatever. But you don't kind of achieve the goals, like the actual work of that. And so I think having that idea is really important. And I think the interesting part is as well on that is, we create these structures that allow people to contribute and discover who are the other people interested in solving the same problems. And as you say, there's like hype cycles. So sometimes it makes sense for there to be a lot of structure because there's a lot of people, and so how do we coordinate everybody? But I think the other side that can be difficult sometimes is if there's a lot less participation, then when is the right time to resize? And I guess that's the thing that the tag groups have reckoned with in the last year, is to say maybe it makes sense to reorganize.
Yeah, kind of focus that effort, that energy, exactly. And I think that's one of the goals of this new kind of initiative cycle too, is to keep the outputs small, right? So they're supposed to be scoped to 3 months or so. And this is kind of a work in progress, right? But the idea being that if you can keep these small things, you can get people excited for 3 months to do this one thing, and then maybe they have another 3 months to do another thing, or maybe they need a break, and then that way we can kind of give folks that space. So I think that's definitely a way to think about that as well, and hopefully get folks interested. And if you weren't aware of that too, I think this is a kind of a cool way for folks to get involved if they want to, is to say, I just have this one thing I'm interested in, we'll work on it for some period of time, meet some people, maybe there'll be something else later that interests me, right? I think we have to make it normal to just do the short periods of contribution to the tags, going back to that burnout question, right? Because you can't get burned out if you're just doing one thing at a time. Well, you can, but anyway, hopefully it helps.
Yeah, that was one of the big things is with the previous structure, the working groups the scopes were varied. And sometimes working groups just kind of forever kind of kept putting out deliverables or white papers. And a great example of a working group that kind of kept carrying on was kind of the platforms working group that was part of the app delivery tag, and now it's a community group. It's huge. I mean, it took off the past few years, and now they have their own, co-located day. But then there's others that kind of, maybe wither on the vine because some individual, and maybe there's only like a handful that are focused on the idea, and then it just kind of peters out, or you take on too big a chunk of work. You scope too much. Like, hey, we're going to write this white paper. It's going to be 50 pages long, and 20 pages into it, all of a sudden people drop off, and then you don't really, who knows what's going on. So, like Marina kind of pointed out, like, having stricter definitions around what a sub-project is, ongoing work. Like a great example is like project reviews. Those are no longer the responsibility of kind of the responsibilities of the tags themselves. It's a dedicated sub-project directly under the TOC now. Tags still need to send representatives like tech leads and chairs every once in a while to kind of make sure that we're collaborating, but it's open to anybody. Anyone can join the project review sub-project. It's not specifically the main responsibility of the tags, and to kind of avoid, that situation where we had just certain tags were just glorified project presentations and unable to focus on other work. And so keeping that stuff kind of scoped down a lot easier to be able to say, oh, okay, we can check in, chairs and tech leads have an easier job of having it kind of spelled out for like, how do we do kind of like the health checking? Like, where are you at? Do we kind of stop this or pause it because we're, spinning its wheels, or, having a better structure around those things is going to be really huge, kind of going forward. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we've talked a lot about like onboarding, right? Getting new folks in, and I think this is great, and hopefully some of you have new ideas about how you can get involved if you want to. I want to transition now to maybe talk about like offboarding, right? Because I think that's an important part of like this avoiding burnout cycle, is what's the pathway for folks in leadership to take a break, right? To step away temporarily, permanently, and but without like leaving the project just disappearing one day, like leaving the project in a good state. I think this is a thing that not just for tags, but for every open source project, right? Sometimes people need breaks. I think this is how we prevent burnout, right? So if anyone has any thoughts about like, that offboarding process and like that stage of the process, what, if you've ever seen it work, or if you have ideas about how it could work or anything like that. Yeah. I'll give you all a moment. It's more awkward in person, but I always like when in meetings to leave the silence, right? To encourage people to talk. So,
I think one of the most important things is to keep communication open and transparent. I think sometimes people feel that they're like missing out on their commitments when they need to take a step back, and they just need to be able to explain it, and people need to be able to accept it and to move on. And I think the other aspect to this is having some clear, so that kind of works with initiatives and tech leads. When it comes to chairs and the people who are actually doing the organizing, you need to be always thinking about succession and who the next leaders and up and coming people in the community are going to look like, so that when the time comes that you need more organization capability, you can kind of like tackle someone who's already there in the wings.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely true that like having a good pipeline for getting folks into the tags, into whatever project, is I think key to getting the leadership cycling as well, right? Because then you have new people who are interested and have the excitement and time to then cycle into those leadership positions as well, right? It's all the same kind of cycle there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think the way, I think I mentioned this before, but the way the Kubernetes SIG groups has the shadowers concept, and it, just more recently we that's kind of been introduced with the TOC. We have some shadows up there as well to help kind of fill in the temporary gaps, and having a structure around encouraging people to say, hey, it's almost kind of like you think about an on-call escalation. You have a primary and you have a backup sometimes, and the backup usually doesn't. There's not anything for them to do, but having them in the room and having the context so that if they do have to step in, and they do have to kind of in an event of emergency or someone I think those could be some things that we could kind of take into not only the tags but into the projects as well, and just kind of encourage folks to in the near term, without actually formalizing something, just making sure that especially in my tag, with the way we run readings, like it might say co-chair next to my name as a title, but that doesn't make me any more important than anyone else in the tag. It's very much, and I think you kind of talked about this, Alex, too, on like the inclusivity of it. Like, the more people understand how it works, the more we're kind of like doing it like together, rather than just kind of like waiting for kind of the chair or the tech lead to kind of like push things. That really helps other people kind of like step up even in temporary situations, and they get little bits of exposure and experience, so that way when we get to a point where a situation does happen, they're more confident, they're more comfortable being able to kind of step in instead of kind of just kind of sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah, definitely, and I think there's no recipe for that, but I can definitely share. The experience that we had with text storage. It's been, I think it's been a way to get to know each other, bi-weekly, meeting after meeting. First, you just join just by listening, and then over time, you get to know the people, you get to know what you can contribute to, and that's how you build a relationship that allows the projects to grow. I think that's our experience. Without tag storage, we would not be in the sandbox. We had to do a lot of steps, make a lot of changes, understand how, we could operate well in this ecosystem, and without Alex, Jing as well, in particular, but the whole group, we would not have been, made this possible. Also contributing to documents, but this happened just by participating. So my advice is to participate to meetings if you can, and then from there, things will evolve. I think naturally. I think. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that success story of the tags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can.
Go ahead.
Don't want to hog the time too much, but something I guess I'm thinking about is it's tempting to model things in terms of people are contributing or they're not contributing, but really it's a spectrum, and I think the shadows is probably one example of that as people are coming in. But I sort of wonder about kind of the reverse, is like how do you provide that space for people to step back, hopefully before they're burning out, right? so that somebody else can step up. And so maybe the person who's leading, should we say, becomes the shadow in a sense, and that the new person coming in has backup, and they feel like even if they're new, they can still kind of step up to the primary kind of position, and then other people can kind of...
I like that kind of reverse contributor ladder in some ways, right? Going backwards on the ladder is like equally as important, right, as being able to go forwards, and doing that mentoring and that all of that stuff. Yeah, I think that's definitely key. And I think all of this reminds me too of the benefits of open governance, right? And doing stuff in the open, right? Is that everyone can see what's happening and what you're doing, so that if and when someone does need to step back, people at least know what they did, what they were contributing to the group, how they made it all work. Because I think the more we do this stuff in private, which I think can be comfortable to do, right? Because you don't have to explain yourself to everybody, but it means that it's harder for other people to step up and do that because they don't even know what you're doing to make the group happen. So I think that's like tying it all back to open source, right? And building these communities. So, yeah.
We have 3 minutes left. Is there any final questions or comments or tidbits people would like to share?
I thank you all for going with us on this interactive talk journey. So
Yeah.
appreciate everyone who stepped up.
Yes, thank you very much. And one thing I wanted to point out is there is there are changes coming around the discoverability of the tags. There's a new contributors CNCF site that's now live. I believe it's cncf.io/contribute. Okay.
Contribute.cncf.io for the recording, yeah.
All right, perfect. Almost got it. Got a little backwards, but that should help to improve some of the discoverability of the tags and other areas for like community groups, and just to kind of at a holistic, not just specific to the tag, but holistically, how do we help people contribute to the CNCF and to projects and kind of guide them in the right direction. But yeah, I just wanted to shout that out. So, because it was brought up very early on that discoverability definitely is an issue, and that is something for me as well. Like, I didn't know about the tags itself back when I was a project maintainer, and I was trying to put a project through Sandbox. I quickly fell through kind of like the firewall of learning about, this is the tag and doing a project. What do I need to do? And that's usually how people learn about tags. Is it's usually from the project maintainers, and they're trying to get something done with their projects. Usually with either Sandbox reviews, or they're trying to jump levels. But there needs to be more work there to make sure that's a more consistent relationship, advising and not just trying to act as gatekeepers or roadblocks. And that projects have, and the communities have pathways to different.
Yeah, exactly. Tying it back to the title.
Trying
That's what we want to do. Is you want to help
there.
projects build their pathways in these different technical areas.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we had some good ideas here about how we can help move this process forward. So keep having this discussion, and thank you all.
Thank you.